Welcome to the VC React podcast. Every week, we bring you insights and reactions from top VCs reacting to weekly news on startups, VCs, and investment rounds. Our VC guests today are Zewail, venture partner at Endure Capital, Hasan Haider, founder and managing partner at Plus VC, and Khaled Talhouni, managing partner at Nuwa Capital. In the video description, you can find more details on our guests, their LinkedIn profile, and links to their company's websites. Our weekly news are brought to you by FWDstart, MENA's top news aggregator that sends you MENA startup and VC news twice a week. And as always, from FWDstart, we have my co-host, Jamie. What's happening this week, Jamie?
Good morning, Ahmad. I've gotten the good morning back in there, so we're off to a flying start. So let's start off in Saudi with Wide Ventures and all things AI. So it seems like they're investing across the AI stack, which is interesting. So Wide Ventures, they're Saudi Aramco's 500 million VC fund. So they led a 6.5 million pre-Series A funding round for a Californian AI sort of no-code, low-code platform called AI Explain. And then they followed that up in lightning quick succession with the announcement of a 15 million solo investment in a South Korean chipmaker called Rebellions. So that's part of a Series B extension round. And interestingly, Rebellions, they're actually working with Samsung to develop their proprietary chip for the Gen AI market as well. So in both cases, the companies will use some of that funding to establish new Riyadh-based subsidiaries that will then serve as each respective company's MENA headquarters. So maybe just a small bit about each company. So AI Explain, they provide infrastructure for, let me get this right, activating AI agents. So they have a platform that has 40,000 AI models, pipelines, tools. So essentially helping AI developers accelerate time to market. So they opened operations in the Middle East earlier this year. They've secured a number of contracts with organizations in the region, including the Saudi Data and Artificial Intelligence Authority. So Wide Ventures, they're going to be helping them to support the localization of the company's AI solutions in the kingdom, with the goal ultimately of making it easier for organizations to develop localized AI solutions. And they've also apparently been working with some regional AI organizations to build an alliance for Arabic LLMs development, which is due to begin at some point later this year. So that's AI Explain. Rebellions, on the other hand, so AI chip maker based in South Korea, specialize in chips for AI inference. So they offer apparently superior energy efficiency and low latency performance. So over the past 3 years, they developed 3 AI chips. And the third is going to be rolled out later this year. They completed a Series B funding round this January. That was $124 million. So to date now, they've raised $225 million with this Wide Ventures 15 million Series B extension added into the mix. And this is also, interestingly, the VC's first deal in South Korea, which I thought was pretty noteworthy.
Yeah, that's amazing. We're seeing now VC firms from the Middle East region investing in international companies and asking them to open offices, operating offices in the region. I did some digging in both companies. Let me start with AI Explain. So this company was started by Hasan Sawaf. He used to work at Amazon. Before that, he used to head, their AI. And then he moved to Facebook, and then he started this company in 2020. There was a founding investor in this company, and that was Transform VC. And the partners at that firm are Raed Masri and Rama Shaqaqi. They co-founded the company together with Hassan, Raed Masri partner here, and co-founder and investor in AI Explain. And the other partner, Rama, she worked as a COO at AI Explain for like 2 years. For Rebellion, I looked up the founders. The main founder worked at Samsung, Intel, SpaceX, Starlink project. And then he moved to Morgan Stanley to work on equity trading products. And then he came up with the idea of 40 billion and moved back to South Korea. He was in New York City. They're all technical founders. And the company has almost 100 employees. I have a few questions here. How do you think about this dynamic between founders and investors starting companies together? That's one. And then maybe touch on investing internationally for the Middle East VC firms.
Yeah, maybe I think just like on Wa'ad doing some AI infrastructure. I mean, questionable whether the first company I explained is infrastructure in the sense, has an LLM component, so I guess it's soft infrastructure. I think my first reaction is always like I'm always slightly worried about adverse selection when it comes to large state institutions doing direct deals like this in kind of more cutting edge, deep tech,
totally
global
agree with
businesses.
you on that.
I think usually, and I don't know what goes on inside Wa'ad, and I have a lot of respect for the guys at Wa'ad, but I'm speaking as someone who worked at a government institution of like in a similar way. You see how years and years ago, you'd see how like there'd be a top-down mandate that kind of filters down. Let's do AI here, and then you kind of scramble to look for it, and it's sometimes hard to kind of see which is the right company to do or not, and understand fully the dynamics, because there's a lot of very smart money looking at this sector now, and even the very smart money is subject to that kind of adverse selection effect of having to be in the sector and having to do it very quickly. So I'm always slightly worried without knowing the details of the company. Having said that, Hasan is a super impressive guy. I met him a couple of times, and I think I think whatever he's building is definitely noteworthy. I wonder why you'd raise from Wa'ad versus the multitude of very focused like VCs with a focused mandate on the segment. But yeah, I think in terms of VCs co-building companies, I think like it's sometimes like a little bit of a red flag, but sometimes can be quite interesting if you kind of push it in the right direction. So you have some examples where VCs can be actively involved in setting up a business, but not taking on an executive role. I think that's a line which once you cross that becomes a bit more, but you can't say you can actively, and I think we've all done it. I've done it certainly a few times before, where you kind of really lobby a founder to start a business. You really start co-authoring, what that business might be, but then you don't step in to have some kind of operational or executive roles.
I've seen this in Carta, where Henry was pitching an idea for another company. First, Henry, the founder of Carta, he was pitching an investor another idea, but the investor said, "Hey, I have another idea for you, and I think you are the perfect founder to start this company." And Henry said yes. Eventually, after multiple meetings, and then they both started the company together. The investor stepped aside after a few months, and Henry took over. Now it's a $8 billion company. Hasan, Ali, have you seen other deals like this? And what do you think about the AI stack for Wa'ad?
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna comment more generally, not specifically about this deal, but I kind of completely agree with Khaled. Usually when a deal's coming to us in the region from a market that's like in Silicon Valley or whatever, and especially in like a really hot field where like all of the funds in Silicon Valley are throwing money into AI and whatever, like why the hell would you raise from the region? Like it's not the ideal target investor or whatever for you. So it's always like, as Khaled said, like it's usually a red flag whenever someone's coming from outside the region, from more developed ecosystems trying to raise from our region. And whenever they say, oh, we'll localize, we'll come and set up, it's usually a sign that they haven't been able to raise in their local markets. We see it a lot with startups from India, like especially, and whenever a deal is coming from Silicon Valley to us, like it's always like immediately it's like, why? What's going on? Like, what's the story here? So I'm very skeptical when shit like that happens. Like, it's not my thing. I think like there's a push and mandate outwards, let's build ourselves as the region into real investors in this asset class or whatever all over the world. But honestly, the deal flow that we're gonna see is probably gonna be tier 2, tier 3 deals. Like they're not gonna be the best deals because the best deals will get snapped up by the best investors in those local home markets, right? So
especially
let me
early
push
stage,
back.
right?
Let me
Yeah.
push back a little bit on this,
sure.
Hassan. I think there's this connection. Arab American founders, they feel closer to the region and they
Sure,
approach
but
VCs from the MENA region,
I
and the
I
other
think
way around.
so. The thing is, like, we do that. We have an like as Plus VC, we have an allocation to MENA diaspora founders, founders from the MENA region, wherever they are in the world, and it's about 10% of our fund. So we do understand that affinity sort of thing. But something that's like it's like super hot in Silicon Valley, like AI, and then they come and raise from like whoever in the region. It's so like not a normal sort of thing to happen. Like we might tag along, but us leading a deal, like no, like there's something weird
Yeah,
there.
I mean, just to jump in, I don't think the Jamal Abdel Nasser theory of venture capital holds true, right? Like this kind of
Okay.
sense of Arab nationalism attached to like where you raise money from, I don't think is really relevant. And like Hassan says, I think there is somewhat of an adverse selection at the early stage. I mean, just to be very clear, at the
Yeah.
early stage, at the late stage, once you need, if you're the type of business that requires, especially like a chip
Billion.
maker, for example, like
Yeah.
you know, you need a depth of capital that actually you're going into not VCs anymore. You're really looking at very large asset managers to fund you. I think then that's much more interesting for sovereigns and these types of institutions start investing because only they can provide not only the capital but also sometimes a regulatory framework to kind of base something in Saudi, for example. So that becomes much more interesting. Yeah,
But
the
a
early
seed
stage, I
deal,
think co-investing. Yeah.
no, it doesn't make sense to me. Like I think that's usually not something that I would look at. Like for me, if they came, I'd be like, why are you coming to me? And who have you already spoken to and said no? And like so there's a lot of things that sort of
The only thing that makes me pause is Hasan is super impressive. I mean, he's the real deal. So yeah,
Hassan,
he's
yeah.
really impressive. Hasan, so yeah, very impressive guy. So
and
I
I
don't know. I
know
wouldn't. Yeah.
yeah, so I'm not talking specifically about this deal. I'm like in general, whenever something's coming. Like honestly, like our region, our ecosystem has the lowest number of VCs and the lowest amount of funding that's anywhere, even in emerging markets, right? When you're looking at Southeast Asia, you're looking at India, looking at all these other markets, there's not that much actual money that's being deployed from investors here into early stage venture capital. Like we are a tenth of these other markets in terms of percentage of GDP that's being deployed into VC. Like last year, we only had $1 billion that was total invested, which is lower than some small markets in Europe, like Holland or whatever, right? So it doesn't really make a lot of sense that these guys that are in markets which have been like, 100 and 1,000x more funding and funds are coming here to raise from us. Like it's, especially at the early stages, is always something that for me.
Ali, what do you think? Especially that I know Endure Capital, they invest a lot in Arab Americans in Silicon Valley.
Yeah, and Canada. Yeah, I would say it's definitely a courageous decision by Wild Ventures to do this. It's early in the life cycle. AI Explain is in a very competitive market. I looked at their product. It's a very good product, it seems, from the demos. But it's a very risky product in the sense that it's actually a combination, you could say, of a marketplace because it provides all these components from all the different AI providers, 40,000 according to them, and a no-code provider built on top of it. So marketplaces are always risky bets in Series A. So it's a double risky bet from Wide in this case. So I respect their courage. And who knows? I mean, maybe they are the ones who reached out to Explain and told them, we want to be in you. So, we want to be investing and that's why the ticket isn't huge for an AI company. For the aspect about the partners being also co-founders of the company, Transform VC, it might be the case. Of course, I don't have any inside information that they were actual co-founders and early employees, and then they used their stocks in the company and warehouse them into their fund to get things kind of to start to have something, and that might be the reason for this interesting situation on LinkedIn. for Rebellions, that's another courageous investment. Rebellions was founded in 2020, so it was before the Gen AI situation actually happening, and they obviously made a full pivot to positioning their low latency as a differentiator in the Gen AI space. South Korea is great in chip manufacturing, so if they are a winner, they will be a huge winner. But it's also a very, very risky bet, and still early. And NVIDIA is not going to be resting on their laurels and waiting for a small chip maker from South Korea to catch up. So they're both interesting bets, and I think also the fund size for WAD is a factor here, because it's a $500 million fund. I don't think they can invest. Specifically, this fund can't invest like in a Series C for wait for explain to already prove out itself and go into the Series C with a 100 million ticket or something. For a 500 million fund, that's not really practical. They probably maximum they can do a 20 million ticket. So so they might be preemptively looking in the early stages, and the diaspora is a natural place to look. I'm trying to kind of put myself in their shoes and paint the bright scenario.
Yeah, and
but
from
it is
the way
definitely a huge risk.
The way I see it is that if every investor, every VC firm in the MENA region invests inside the MENA region, pretty much all of us will be investing in the same deals eventually. But then there would not be different returns for different companies. So to stand out, I think some of those VCs will start investing internationally to diversify first and to bring different kind of returns. And yes, I agree with you, Ali. It was risky to invest in those two companies, especially the South Korean one. I've never seen a VC firm from MENA investing in Southeast Asia or
Shuruk does a lot of
Shuruk.
investment.
Shuruk. Oh yeah. Shuruk. Yeah, that's true.
So and we've seen a bunch of deals they've done. So there's a lot of collaboration between South Korea and the MENA region. Actually, that's been increasing quite a lot.
We'll move to Egypt now with Jamie. What's happening in Egypt?
Amazingly, this is our third consecutive week where I think we're discussing Egyptian fintech company with, I guess, banking the unbanked at the forefront of their mission. So we had Connect Money's 8 million seed. That was followed then by last week by DuPay. They had their 13.5 million Series B extension. And this week we have the unicorn of the pack, MNT Halan. So the Egyptian startup, they just raised $157.5 million in a new funding round. So that's to fuel their expansion beyond Egypt. So this comes 17 months after they announced a $400 million investment, which saw them reach unicorn status. So just a small bit about MNT Halan. So microfinance lending and payment company. So as I mentioned, the goal is to use digital bank to bank the unbanked, replace cash with electronic alternatives. They have a broad range of services, digital payment options, mobile wallets, cards. I think they have e-commerce vertical as well, interestingly. So the International Finance Corporation led the round with a $40 million investment. They were joined by existing investors such as Development Partners International, Lorix Capital Partners, funds managed by Apis Partners LLP, Luna HGB Corp, etc. So this new development brings the startup's total funding to $677.5 million over the past 2 years. And I think it seems like M&A is going to be a core part of their strategy moving forward. Back in March 2024, they acquired the Advanced Pakistan Microfinance Bank. That I think was its acquisition marked their inaugural expansion. I think it provided them with over 62,000 clients and 19 branches. So the expansion begins for MNT Halan.
And this was not their first merger or acquisition.
No.
Halan was the company in Egypt, and then MNT came along. I think it was from Holland, and there was some kind of a merger between both companies, and then they changed the name to MNT Halan.
Yep.
And the amount is big, right? They claim that they are the first unicorn in Egypt, and they raised more than 600 million so far. And I'm sure the valuation is way over $1 billion. I don't know the latest valuation. What do we think about this deal?
Is it an equity or a debt financing? I couldn't find any information about
I
that.
think there's probably a large component of it is debt.
There is,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a mix.
That's my expectation.
Because even the
Yeah,
previous
so
round, when it was announced, it was there was a large debt component that was just announced. It's not
Exactly.
much raised. So,
Alan was actually, I invested in it years ago, a very small amount when I was at Wanda. So I'm familiar with the business in its older iteration, which used to be, interestingly, very much a
tuk-tuks. It was
yeah,
Uber or tuk-tuks.
on-demand tuk-tuks and logistics. So it was Uber plus plus. I guess Uber also has a logistics component, so it had that. But they wanted to kind of really target that lower income segment in Egypt for yeah, and then they started building financial solutions for it for those kind of captured audience. And the founder, Munir Dakhla, his name, I think was had a number of he had a microfinance business before, so he's very well versed in it. Obviously, I don't know what happened after, because I left and I never really stayed in touch much with Munir, except I ran into him from here to there. But it was always part of the plan to really grow into this, build out these kind of finance solutions for these underserved segment of the population that has very little access to financial services. So I think what happened was they really accelerated that plan with the merger with MNT. And I think on that level, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, there's tens of millions of people who are, low income, but otherwise creditworthy in Egypt, who are totally shut out of kind of financial services, particularly lending, but then other areas. And if you find a good way to capture that audience and serve that segment, then I think it's super interesting. And it is quite hard to do. I think it's one of those things that is intellectually easy, but intellectually makes sense. I mean, but hard to actually make work on practice. So yeah, I mean, best of luck to them. I'm a big fan of Munir. I think he's an awesome founder. I think he's built great.
And the growth is amazing.
Yeah.
They managed to grow the company 20
in a difficult time.
Consumers 20-fold.
Just
a few years. Yeah.
No, I think they've executed super well, but Khaled showing his age by talking about when this company first started as a completely different thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's when I invested. We invested in I think it was 2018. I want to say it was 2018. 6 years ago.
I think it was 2018. I remember the deal.
Not that far ago.
Yeah, I mean, for the ecosystem, it feels like a long time, right? 6 years, like a century.
It's a lifetime. Yeah.
A lot of the funds we didn't even exist 6 years ago that are running around.
Yeah.
So
It's a lot in MENA VC years.
Yeah, it's a lot in MENA VC years.
But it was part of the plan, though. I think from day one, he was adamant.
I think the founders had MNT as well. I think it was the co-founder.
Was a shareholder.
They were shareholders there, and I think that was a merger really more than anything else of their existing operations. But yeah, they've done an excellent job, I think. But there's so much opportunity in Egypt. It's 100 million, 110 million people. The banking is, the whole financial industry probably covers about 10% of that population. There's so many opportunities, not just in sort of lending to these sort of folks, but in almost every sort of segment of fintech. Like we're pretty excited about investing in fintech in Egypt. It's been a nice market for us.
Hasan, what trends are you looking at right now?
Everything, honestly. Like the banks don't do much in the Egyptian market, so there's opportunities in almost every sector. One of the deals that we did recently is quite cool. It's a study now, pay later sort of solution for K-12 schools called Patron. For middle class, lower class parents, paying school fees is bulky and it's difficult. So they did that by splitting it up into 12 equal installments. It's a nice, really small thing. And finding these niches where there's opportunity is actually really fun. We did Settle as well, which is another one. It's on the other side. It's B2B payment reconciliation and stuff like that as well in the Egyptian market. But there's just so much that can be done there in fintech. It's pretty awesome. Ali,
what trends are you seeing in Egypt for fintech?
No, I mean, this thesis of banking the unbanked is never ending. Simply, there are tens of millions of people who are creditworthy, who need to be served and are not. And the banks don't seem to have any interest in serving them any time in the near future. And so this niche is great. It keeps giving opportunities, as Hasan was mentioning, other ideas, because really the big institutions are not serving tens of millions of people, and at scale you can make a good profit out of that. I think that the timing is both, like, I think, smart and risky at the same time of this deal, in the sense that interest rates are good now for a lending company. It's good for margins to have high interest rates. At the same time, they probably did the financing also. Obviously, interest rates are going to affect that, and when interest rates go down, it's going to be interesting to see how they model their finances moving forward with lower interest rates with their customers, but paying off the debt at the current level. So that will be something to watch out for. I think what Munir mentioned in the press release about going for other geographies and expansion is a key strategic move that is really smart, and I think crucial, because there is currency risk in Egypt these days. There is interest rate risk. There are other even types of social risks, etc. So it's very important for them to start diversifying their portfolio. Pakistan is also risky in its own way, but I guess, having a portfolio of different countries, hopefully they'll be moving into other types of areas that are not as geopolitically sensitive. So that's, but it's incredible growth, great team, very impressive.
I want to ask about the founder. You all mentioned him, Munir Nakhle. So on his LinkedIn profile, I saw that he is a CEO in 3 companies. I think 4, but 2 of them are the same. So we're talking about 3 companies now. There's Mashru'i, Tasahil, وحالا. Is this a red flag for some VCs or not? I know that the most famous example of this is Elon Musk, CEO of 7 companies, and people are still investing with him. And we have a few people in the Middle East who are managing multiple companies and getting VC investment. I feel that it's against the principles of me as a VC investing in your company if you're not dedicated for this. So what do you think about this?
It's not something we would invest in. I think that's one of the main reasons we passed on it, is because there was other companies. It wasn't like, so one of the things that I like to focus on is, look, I'm going to invest my money, but you need to invest all of your time, energy, and effort into this thing to make it succeed. Like, well, that's the deal, right? Like, we'll invest money, you do everything else. And so if there isn't that full commitment to build this thing, for us, it's seed stage investors, at least. Like, I don't know about late stage, but like at seed, there's nothing there except the team, and that's what we're investing in. So what I'm investing in is you and your time and your effort. So if you're not going to spend 100% of your time building this thing that I'm investing with you, I'm not going to be investing. And so for me, it's usually a pretty big red flag, that, and part-time founders, we still work in Saudi Aramco, we still work whatever, but if you invest in me, I'll quit my job. I was like, no, dude, it's wrong way around. You need to quit your job, show me you believe in this thing, start working on it, and then I'll invest in you, not the other way.
Agreed. I mean, to be fair, Munir's always had like multiple, if I remember, again, I haven't told me a few years, but he, from day one, there were multiple interests, and was always a big worry around this kind of thing. And we got over it because we do it really by exception, and I think I've only done it a handful of times, really. But you're right. I think it is a big red flag 98% of the time. I think there's sometimes you can argue for an extenuating circumstances, but really it's a 1 in 100 type of thing. And it feels like Munir has pulled it off, but it's still early, till the exit. But it seemed like he was being able to pull it off. Sometimes these companies, I'm not sure, because I'm not so close to this. These companies might be interrelated also. They might be part of a wider M&T Haran group, which is worth checking, because there was that plan. Again, my information is way out of date, and I'm not familiar with these underlying companies, but there might be they might kind of fall in some way, shape, or form under the same umbrella, or some might do, but worth checking on that front.
Yeah, I think I'm not commenting on M&T Hanan specifically, but it's very situational in the sense that is this company relevant, or do they complement each other or not? Do they have a very good management team? So probably in the seed stage, that won't work. But if it's a later stage round and the management team is excellent and everything kind of complements each other, there might be, in the special case, an extenuating circumstance. But of course, focus is always best for the investor, at least.
Let's move to Saudi now. Jamie, what's happening in there?
Yeah, so let's look at Otto. So they're a Saudi logistics platform. They've just secured $8 million in funding to accelerate expansion to the UAE and Turkey. So Series A funding round was led by Sanibel Investments, participation as well from Saudi Capital, Iliad Partners, Propeller, and Soma Capital. It was founded back in 2019, a self-described shipping gateway, so enables online merchants to manage, ship, track, analyze their shipping and storage activities from one platform. So streamlined. So it links online store owners with more than 250 local and international shipping companies. So in terms of integrations with Shopify, FedEx, DHL, amongst others. It claims to be serving over 10,000 local and international brands through the platform. It said that it has doubled its revenue on a year-over-year basis, and experienced significant growth in terms of orders processed.
I want to ask about their business model.
Yeah,
Because it
great.
seems that
It's a
they
great
set-
company. It's amazing. I think everyone should celebrate and support this one. Not only because I was a seed stage investor and we were the first money into this deal.
Okay.
Yeah, nothing to do with that. Like,
Of course. But Hasan, then explain to us their business model, because it seems that they sit on top of DHL, UPS, Aramex, all of these shipping companies. They provide software. What do they exactly do?
It's basically a little like Shippo in the US, where you have a single integration into multiple last mile sort of delivery things. And then Otto sort of automatically figures out what's the best option for you to ship this product from where, right? So it works really well for omnichannel, where they have lots of different stores in lots of different places. It works really well when you have multiple potential shipment options, and they make money on top of that. So it's actually pretty
And they
cool.
focus on e-commerce, right?
Yeah, e-commerce mostly. There's a few other things coming in the pipeline, but yeah, it's and it's a pretty big market, I think.
Yeah,
I'm not biased at all. Like, no.
Of course not, Hasan. Of course not.
Absolutely, definitely not.
No, I think one thing here is that I think people underestimate just what's kind of happening in the GCC around e-commerce, and sometimes we think as VCs, oh, we've moved beyond kind of e-commerce and e-commerce adjacencies. I mean, we're just the sheer volume of e-commerce and retail shifting to online, that's going from what was a low base to now, depending on the category, like somewhere like 15 to 20%. And not even, I think in most categories we're still sub 10%. You see all this explosive demand for just this soft and hard infrastructure of e-commerce. You know, in this case, it's an aggregator with even just the last mile, just simple 3PL and last mile demand. It's just through the roof. So I think we sometimes forget that, no, even like what is deemed a little bit unsexy, like just the last mile, there's actually so much room for growth in that. And you know, companies like this, like the aggregator, showing like why there's so much pent up demand for these services. So yeah, it's exciting. And it's good to see, actually. It's good to see that there's kind of money flowing into this segment, because there's, you know, it's only going to grow very significantly.
It's great to have this type of a company in the ecosystem as well. It's an ecosystem enabler, because it's a plug and play kind of situation for others to get their shipping part taken care of. And that's something that's a huge strength of the Chinese market, for example. You can easily do that in China, more so than the US with Shippo even. You have many providers of this type of thing, and they're all very effective and very efficient. And so I really love the fact that they're doing this, and that they did also the heavy lifting of creating like the warehouse management, the returns management, and all these things, so that an e-commerce thinker or someone else that's gonna maybe come up with a new idea that would use this shipping will also be able to grow quickly. I think also their expansion into UAE and Turkey are the very logical next steps. Both markets are markets that are doing a lot of selling online. And so whether internally in their own national markets or globally. And so that's also a great move. And it seems like a great team. So great one, Hasan.
Yeah, I think just to add to what Khaled was talking about, that e-commerce isn't really sexy and everyone's already done with that. We're not done with that. We're still investing. So we just did a couple of investments that are like the new e-commerce. I think everyone's been talking about social commerce and video commerce. So those are things that we've been looking at pretty actively. So we did Mojo out of Kuwait, which is doing a video-based commerce for makeup and stuff, which is quite an interesting play. And then the other one that we just did out of Bahrain is an online auction platform. So there's a lot of areas within e-commerce that still haven't been covered in our region. So we're still uncovering more of those, I think.
Yeah, and shout out to the founders. They're doing something I've never seen before. Let me show you on their LinkedIn profile. Usually there's the circle that says we're hiring or looking for. But what they did was we raised our Series A in a circle on all of their profile pictures, all of the team members, not only the founders. Yeah, you can see here.
Amazing.
Nice. So I love that.
They have a really fantastic fundraising announcement video as well, I have to say. I think it's about 10 minutes long. And look, I've never met Mohammed, but it just seems extraordinarily charismatic. It really comes across.
Yeah,
one other
thing
also caught my attention.
Investment memo, which was really interesting. And
nice.
Very well written.
Can you all please share these links with us so we can add them to the description box for this video? Thank you. So another thing that caught my attention in this deal and the previous deal that we talked about, Halan, LPs invested directly in the company. So in Auto Sanabel invested, and in M&T Halan, IFC invested. Are we seeing more LPs participating in rounds now?
They aren't only LPs though. IFC, IFC is a big direct mandate. They've been investing in direct longer than they have been LPs, I think. And Sanabel also, they've done quite a few direct deals as well. So
but
I think both have both mandates. I don't think it's just LPs.
Yeah, I think it's agreed. Yeah, they have especially IFC is a big direct investor. They like to do, especially something like M&T Halan. I think a lot of LPs, specifically those that are more institutionalized, even the larger family offices, I mean the way you drive alpha into your venture portfolio is being able to do a little bit more direct in the top deals you're doing, that your underlying managers are doing. So I think it is quite common. The more sophisticated investors do it more. And yeah, you bake it into your agreements with the managers. You do some kind of side letter that has a co-investment right. And I wish actually like more regional capital would do it more and more, because I think it's an awesome way to validate the asset class as a whole, rather than let the managers do kind of the initial sifting and heavy work, and then you just pick the emerging winners from that portfolio. So you increase your exposure to the companies that seem to be working, and or you have a strategic connection with that you can help actually grow further. So you're seeing it more and more and more, and I think it's a great thing. I think there should be a lot of that going on.
Yeah, we see it quite often actually. A lot of LPs want access to co-investment. We're happy to do it. We like to do the work, and then they can piggyback on our efforts for sure.
Our last story for today is from Jordan. Jamie.
Yeah, let's end things in your neck of the woods, Ahmed, if we can. So so the ISSF, I think it's the second time nearly in as many weeks that we're bringing an announcement from them. So they've increased their commitment in the Jordan-based Oasis 500, so their seed investment on Accelerator, in their second fund, so that's Oasis Ventures 2. I believe that was established back in 2019. So they've increased their commitment from $3 million to $5 million. A small bit about ISSF. Obviously, I've mentioned them before, so I won't go into too much, but established back in 2017 with $98 million. It's a partnership between Central Bank of Jordan and the World Bank. The idea is to support Jordanian early stage startups and SMEs. Just to mention, so they've invested in 17 funds and they've been particularly active this year. So the recent announcement was related to Global Ventures, but this year they've also invested in MSA Novo's MENA Fund, Propeller Ventures 2, and Venture Souk Fund 2. So Oasis 500, they offer up to $100,000 in pre-seed funding. I think selected startups they're eligible for pre-seed funding. It's anywhere between 30,000 to 100,000. In exchange, they don't state the percentage anymore, but I believe it was once upon a time, it was between 5 to 15% equity. And then they take part in a 6-month accelerator program by Oasis 500 as well.
Thank you, Jamie. I'll start with you, Khaled. What do we think about the evolution of accelerator programs in Jordan, about Oasis? How much did they contribute to the ecosystem in Jordan?
I really admire like what the guys at the Oasis 500 are trying to build in Jordan, like to catalyze the industry, because the reason why I like that, because if you go back to kind of its origin, I mean, it was built on that huge momentum on the back of the likes of early days, and now I'm really showing my age, like Maktoob,
the Yahoo acquisition, 2010.
Yeah.
2010.
So exactly. So if you go back to, and even into Souk, I would say into like 20, which was much later. But if you saw between the Maktoob and Souk acquisition, which is I think a 6-year period or so, roughly 5 or 6 year period. Because you had all that talent based in Jordan, I think you had this kind of flowering of a lot of the beginnings of an ecosystem cluster. And
then everyone moved to Dubai.
And then everyone moved to Dubai, exactly. and then that sort of died out, unfortunately. And I think there should be an opportunity to recatalyze that. And I think Oasis is part of that effort, because you do have some positive things going for it, which is talent. It's cost effective, though not that cheap, by the way, relative to kind of other markets. And I really do wish, I mean, not just because I'm Jordanian, but also, because it's a shame to see something, that cluster kind of not reaching its full potential, to kind of get that reignited again. I think the trick is figuring out the Jordan GCC type of corridor, which not that many have really figured out in a good way, but I think that's the key. And I do hope that like stuff like Oasis 500 and all the stuff that the guys at ISF are doing, which is kind of investing with a developmental angle for Jordan, helps drive that again. So that's it. I mean, there are a few interesting companies like that are coming up as well, but I think there could be a lot more volume, and we're hoping there could be more in the future.
Hasan, you worked at 500 before, right? You've been into accelerating programs for a while. Do they still work? Do you still source deals from accelerators? We know that YC is the top accelerator in the world, and everybody is trying to copy their model. In the Middle East, we have Oasis 500, 500 Global, or 500 MENA. We have Flat 6 Labs, of course, and Techstars, and many others. Takatkah. What's happening in the accelerator scene now?
Accelerators have a role to play in ecosystem building for sure. There's a lot of people that want to be founders, don't really know what they need to be doing. And so accelerators do help a little bit in guidance there, but they're not the be all end all of ecosystems. And for me as an investor, when I'm looking at deals from an accelerator, I know how the sausage is made. We ran the accelerator program for 3 years, the MISC 500 one. And honestly speaking, it's like, you have X amount of deals. You need to have X amount of companies in the portfolio in the batch. If you don't have, that many companies that are great to fill out the batch, you kind of fill the batch up with okay and not so okay deals. And that's kind of what happens with a lot of accelerator programs, because I think in the MENA region, we need them to keep building out deal flow so that we can continue to see it. But honestly, out of like 10 deals from accelerators, maybe 1 or 2 that are worth investing in as a seed stage investor, right? Like it's not they're not all good, and most of them are crap. I love the guys at Oasis 500 because I remember when I first started in 2010, they were the big deal, and everyone was like, "Oh wow, Oasis 500 is an accelerator in the region," which is awesome. I'm disappointed by what happened in Jordan, but last 2 years I've been seeing more activity after
Yeah,
COVID, which has been nice to see. We've been paying a lot of attention there. Flat Six Labs has been pretty active. Russia's been doing a great job there as well. So I think we'll still continue to see. My thesis is every small market in the region that's not Egypt, UAE, or Saudi still has 2 or 3 deals and opportunities, amazing founders that are investable at seed stage every single year. And we've seen that. Like I invested in seed in Callow in Bahrain, invested in seed in Flowered in Kuwait. They both grew into huge companies that are now Saudi companies, but they started in these other smaller markets. And I think that's the same for Jordan, Morocco, Tunisia, all of these small. There's you got to pay attention to everywhere. So we just did our first deal in Morocco. We did our first deal in we did our first few deals in Bahrain and Kuwait. So I think we're still paying attention to Jordan. I think seeing news and announcements like what's happening with Oasis 500 is always promising. But most deals from accelerators are crap.
Yeah, I'm very skeptical of accelerators generally. I think they serve an important function on a developmental level, but not a commercial level, meaning, they're good because we get a bit of early funding into ecosystems that are nascent, and people get to get some startup experience, which is a critical part of success. But do they yield great outcomes? I mean, no. I mean, because you're really because there's another in this one as well. There's adverse selection, meaning if you're a great founder, you're gonna just skip it unless you're getting immense value like YC, or your perception of it is immense value, which is more about network. So it's not about the accelerator giving. It's more about you wanting to be part of that network, and there's very hard to make that happen. So if you're able to create that kind of flywheel effect, then fair. I mean, then they work. But generally, as a value proposition, they're very hard to make work. They have an adverse selection built in because better founders will just sidestep them. Especially as like the likes of YC go global, then you just go to YC. You don't want to give up 7% to XYZ local accelerator. What are you really benefiting from? There are some kind of niche cases. I think if you're a hardware, we don't have much of them locally, but there are niche cases where they're very kind of focused, whether it's let's say a manufacturing or hardware or even deep tech based accelerators that have a big niche, and there's a lot of value in helping unlock some of that. Then I think it's interesting, but those are rare and they're niche, and there are not that many of them.
Sorry, what do you think about accelerators?
Hasan was saying most of their deal flow is crap, but really most of deal flow is crap, period, whether it's accelerators or not. And it's really, I guess that's why we have seed investors, to choose between them. And there is this adverse selection aspect, but there are also some types of founders that are like naive kind of founders who don't really know that they're startup founders at the beginning and need an accelerator to brush off some of the dust and help them through. I interviewed 3 founders from Jordan who came out of Oasis 500, so they seem to benefit a lot, especially the ones that are not coming from the typical background and maybe more skewed towards female founders, and they can end up being great because of the support of the accelerator. In general, I love the Jordanian ecosystem because of all the concentration of talent and ambition that's there, and it punches above its weight in terms of what it has produced. Of course, the unfortunate aspect is everything moves out when it grows, and that's a sad part. And which brings us to this case of the ISSF and Oasis and supporting the ecosystem. Funding is good, of course. Funding accelerators is great for ecosystems, but it's not the only thing that helps ecosystems. There are other aspects that I think Jordan needs to work on or I get the impression, because I'm not an expert on Jordan, obviously, things that are legislative, things around working conditions, things like that need to be changed or improved for this to coalesce. and to get things going even better and even quicker. But I love Oasis 500 because of all the impact I have touched myself. Like even though I'm not an expert on the Jordanian and I don't know the Oasis 500 team.
And to end on a positive note on Oasis 500, they have one of the highest rates of female founders in their startup. So kudos to Oasis 500 team. Well, that's a wrap. Thank you so much, Hasan, Khaled, Ali. This was one of the best episodes we had so far.
Yeah, for
Thank
sure.
you so much.
Absolutely.
And thank you, Jamie.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys.